Podcasting is growing. The popularity of podcasting is growing so quickly. The main organization that tracks these things is called Edison Research. And they put this report out each and every year. And I'm not going to take the time to go into all the details of the research and give stats for it. It's pretty thorough. It's dozens and dozens of pages, but I wanted to give you some insights. I want to be from a reputable source and not just Brother Bob talking here. Okay. First is the growth of podcasting. It grows at the rate of about 12% per year, year after year after year. If I pulled up the chart where they compared the growth of podcasting compared to television and radio are on the downswing. Podcasting is growing. Over a third of the population in the U.S. has listened to a podcast in the last week alone, week after week after week. And notice towards the bottom of this section here, over 75% of the population has listened to online audio in the last month, age 12 and up. And look at the last line. Between 85 and 90% of adults have listened to online audio in the last month. Amen. This is talking about online audio, podcasting, online radio, YouTube, all of that. When we look at podcasting alone, it's even more amazing. 48% of men and 45% of women, averaging 47% of adults, have listened to a podcast separate from online audio, a podcast, in the last month. And over a third, 34%, have listened to a podcast in the last week. That means a third of all adults in the United States are listening to podcasts on a weekly basis right now. Right now. Amen. Let's keep going. 70% of the adults in the U.S. say they listen to radio in the car. 55% say they listen to online audio. That's separate from your regular radio stations. 1/3 listen to podcasts in the car. 32%, or about 1/3 of all adults, have the ability in their car to connect either an Android or Apple phone to their car system and listen in the car. Now, I want you to look at something here. 34% of the adult U.S. population listened to a podcast in the past week. 32% have the ability to do so in their car. What does that tell you? People are listening in the car. They're not watching the videos. They're listening to audio where they're usually at in the car, either on the way to work or from work. Most of them are doing that. I mean, what else can you do during that 45-minute drive or whatever it is, right? Those numbers jumped right out at me as I was looking at this research. What does it mean for you? Well, this is also from Edison Research. 81% of millennials and 88% of all listeners report they feel a connection to the podcast host. 88% report they are listening to podcasts because it's meaningful in their life. 75% report by listening to podcasts, the podcast host has been able to influence them to the point they are changing their minds about some beliefs they may have had in the past. Folks, this is huge. Edison Research goes on to say that based on their research, this connection is now so powerful that podcasters are considered more influential than any other category of influencers, such as social media personalities or TV personalities or movie celebrities. I mean, look at that bottom paragraph. Advertisers are beginning to take notice of this power that podcast hosts have. Amen. Over 60% of listeners say they pay more attention to podcast ads than any other source across all genres. Podcast ads are perceived as highly effective in generating brand awareness. And look at this, driving purchase intent. This is the bottom line for advertisers. Now, podcasting has actually passed TV, radio, and print ads for the most part. And it's only getting bigger and more influential, and it will be in the future as well. And remember, podcasting is growing right now at over 12% year after year after year. So what does this mean for you? Let's look at the general benefits overall first. Access to a vast audience. Even when you niche down, it's still a vast reach you are having. Global reach. You'll find that you have listeners from all over the world. We have listeners from over 160 nations on the radio station. I think on the podcast, we got 30 or 40 nations right now. and it's cost effective. It is simple to operate with minimal barriers to entry, and usually will not require a huge budget for you to operate with. You're not limited to a 30 or 60-second ad like you are on TV or radio. You could have a long form content. I'll say the shorter the episode, the better, but it's all dependent on your content and your desires. My faith-based business podcast averages 5 minutes per episode. My KCR podcast, the interview podcast, averages about 30 minutes an episode. Statistics show the ideal is 12 to 18 minutes before listeners start to drop off. Well, Brother Bob, why don't you do 30 minutes then? Because I'm doing interviews, not teaching content. On the faith-based podcast, I teach content and I keep it short. One item, and that's all I do. So, with the KCR podcast, my listeners tend to stay around. On the faith-based podcast, it's teaching. So I teach one item, one subject. I may have a 5-day podcasting thing to do there, but that's how we handle that. Now, podcasting allows businesses to increase the power of their lead generation system. Amen. It can generate new income streams. It establishes your credibility. It gives you a leadership position in your niche, as we already established through the Edison research slides. Listeners tend to feel more connected to podcast hosts than any other type of media or social media hosts. And I love this one: enhanced brand awareness. You're able to reach wider audiences and provide them with a deeper understanding of what you're doing and how your product and your services are able to help them achieve their goals, thereby growing your business and your revenue as well. Amen. But what if you're just an individual wanting to have a podcast? You're not pushing a business or products or services. Well, one, it's fun. I mean, you're going to meet new people all the time. You'll have an outlet for your thoughts and whatever it is you do. You also have the freedom to reach new people in various areas and niches. And this next one's important: monetization. You can come up with various ways to monetize your podcast. You could do affiliate marketing and promote products and services of someone else. You can interview authors and promote their books and get a commission on that. You can even generate some advertising revenue and sell merchandise or ads during your show. I mean, the ideas really are endless. Amen. And through all of this, you're building your audience into a loyal community. You're building your influence. You are blessing your followers and your listeners with insights they may not receive from anywhere else. You're building loyalty to your brand. You're becoming, as we've seen in the first slide, an influencer yourself. Amen. I hope you're understanding this just from this short presentation, the power that's available to you through podcasting. Some other benefits of having an audio podcast, in addition to those we just discussed, let's go ahead and get this clock started here for creating the podcast, but it's good for people who are camera shy. It's easy to consume for the listener, and you can use them for advertising purposes for your ministry. Amen. I'm going to put this countdown clock back on here now, and we're going to go ahead and go to part 3.